Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us tonight. Welcome to the August meeting of our nonprofit plant-based nutrition organization of Wisconsin, or PB Now, as we like to call it. I'm your host, Terry Lynch. The mission of our nonprofit group is to educate, inspire, and support each other on an evidence-backed, whole plant food-based nutritional path for a healthier, happier life. Our group is open to everyone, those plant-based and those just curious about it. It's meant to be a non-judgmental place to get information, inspiration, and support. If you'd like more information about our group, our upcoming meeting dates, speakers, and resources, or just to check out videos of our past meetings, Google us at pbnow.org. That's pbnow.org. As we do each time, can I see a show of hands, either by raising your hand or using the thumbs up icon on the Zoom screen, to show how many of you are currently following a predominantly plant-based lifestyle? All right, I see a bunch of thumbs going up and hands going up. That's excellent. Thank you, everybody. That's great. It's a good number. As we mentioned at the beginning of each meeting, the evidence of the benefits of plant-based nutrition and improving health and quality of life for people of all ages, as published in non-biased medical research, is quite striking. Whether it's improving health through increased energy, weight loss, preventing, slowing, stopping, or reversing problems like allergies, digestive problems, diabetes, heart disease, and early dementia, or increasing our quality of life by helping us feel better quickly, strengthening our immune system, increasing our endurance, improving athletic performance, speeding recovery from exercise, reducing joint pain, clearing thinking, or reducing the physical, emotional, and financial side effects of the illnesses, drugs, and procedures often recommended to treat the conditions plant-based nutrition can help us avoid. The research shows that our bodies do a wonderful job of healing themselves if we stop inadvertently damaging them daily for nutrition and start giving them the nutrition they need to heal and function optimally. It's truly remarkable. Now, let me tell you what's in store for you tonight. Tonight, we'll hear from two speakers. Our first speaker will be our PB Now Medical Director, Dr. Joshua Liberman, who will speak to us for 10 to 15 minutes with his excellent monthly comments. Dr. Liberman will be followed by our featured speaker tonight, a plant-based giant, Dr. Neal Barnard. At the end of Dr. Barnard's presentation, we should have time for Q&A. And I'd mention now that
Eric, can't you?
Questions.
Not going through the mic.
Don't hesitate to pop your questions in the chat box during the presentations, and we'll try to answer as many of them as time permits at the end of each presentation. Tonight's program should end at 7:30 p.m. As a reminder, we have meetings every month, usually on the second Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Central Time. Next month, we'll be doing a doctor's panel with local plant-based and lifestyle medicine physicians that I think you'll really enjoy. In the future, we'll be hearing from Ann and Jane Esselstyn, California plant-based mother and author Rachel Brown, plant-based icon Dr. Michael Clapper, among others. And I hope you can join us for some or all of those. We'll post more information about our upcoming meetings on our website, pbnow.org. If you register on the website or are already registered, you'll get email reminders of our events as they approach. A last quick technical note is that during the meeting, everyone but the speakers will be muted, and we ask that you stay muted to avoid background noise and to allow everyone to hear the speakers they've tuned in to hear. All right, here we go. Our first speaker tonight is a fellowship-trained cardiologist. He is president and CEO of Wisconsin Cardiology Associates and is past president, current trustee of the Wisconsin chapter of the American College of Cardiology. He's a member of the American College of Cardiology's National Nutrition and Lifestyle Work Group, whose membership includes nationally known physicians such as Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, and our speaker tonight, Dr. Neal Barnard. He's an advocate for the use of plant-based nutrition to help improve heart health, general health, and quality of life, and has seen the benefits of plant-based nutrition in both his personal life and that of his patients. We are fortunate to have him here in Milwaukee and as our PB Now Medical Director. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Joshua Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman?
Yep. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. Nice to see so many people on the call. We got a couple months in a row of just huge groups, which of course is a testament to the speakers that we have on these talks. And so I think it's wonderful that you could all be here. Listen, I'm obviously certainly excited to listen to Dr. Barnard and myself. He was in town last month, just wealth of wonderful information, and looking forward to that myself. But I'll just take 5 or 10 minutes of your time ahead of time, like we usually do, to welcome everybody. Hopefully, you're all getting out there and enjoying some sunshine. Summers are beautiful here in Wisconsin. They're kind of short, but they're beautiful. So hopefully, you guys can all get out and soak up some vitamin D. As you're probably familiar, I'd like to talk about a case from my practice, as well as a review of some literature. And happened to see a patient this week that resonated with something that's been going on out in the public and certainly in social media and pop culture. And so I figured it might be a good opportunity to talk about it. Just 2 days ago, I saw a 70-year-old male who has heart disease and has been a patient of mine now for just over a year, and is on some medication to help treat his risk factors. And has intermittently over the years dabbled with plant-based diets. His numbers had been really good actually on medicine and on a decent diet. Wasn't completely plant-based, but last fall decided to kind of do an experiment and go completely plant-based. I think he was doing the PCRM, the physician committee boot camp, but he was doing it basically for 3 months, completely exclusively plant-based. Just to see what would happen with his numbers. And sure enough, his LDL plummeted by almost 50%. His HDL rose, and his triglycerides improved. So basically, a lot of the risk factors that we look at improved. Markers of inflammation for him were already pretty good, Nickel. So that didn't necessarily improve, but he was able to show that his numbers got better. His A1C, he's got diabetes as well, and his A1C improved as well. So you'd think that would be the end of the story, right? He was feeling better, his numbers got better, his sugars got better, and his risk therefore went down. Unfortunately, though, he got a little worried about his protein intake because it seems that these days, every podcast you listen to, every talk show you listen to, everything you read online is all about protein, right? And everyone's afraid, even no matter what they're eating, everyone's afraid that they're not getting enough protein. And physical therapists, primary care doctors, as I said, social media personalities, influencers, podcasters, everybody, all they're talking about is protein. Now, turns out for this gentleman, he got a full lab panel for each of his blood tests. And so if you looked at the protein level in his bloodstream, or the albumin level, which is another sign of protein level, it's just a protein that our liver synthesizes. And if our liver has enough building blocks, your albumin level would be appropriate. And sure enough, his did not change whatsoever from before he went on this 100% plant-based diet to after he went on this diet. His protein level, his albumin level, total protein and albumin did not change at all, but he had in his mind that he should be worried about it. And sure enough, he went off of the plant-based diet, and his numbers, again, this is just a perfect personal experiment. His numbers went back to where they were ahead of time, before. Now, again, they weren't terrible, but his LDL doubled, his triglycerides went up, his A1C went up, and his total cholesterol went up as well. So you'd think, again, that this would prove the experiment. Oh, by the way, his protein did not change once again. So from before going on a 100% plant-based diet, to being on 100% plant-based, to then going back off of it, back to his original diet, his albumin and his total protein did not change at all. But of course, his cholesterol numbers and his A1C did change, and they would change in exactly the ways that you would predict. They got better when he was on the better diet, and they got worse when he went back to a more standard American diet. And so I think this really proves the point that first of all, that plant-based diets can really improve your risk factors. But secondly, I don't know that we really need to worry about protein. And I guess that, these days, as I said, I probably 3 or 4 patients a day are coming into my office, and somehow the conversation lands on protein intake and are, and worrying that we're eating too little protein. So I could just take maybe 5 minutes of time here just to try to, for the 80 people or so that are on this call, to talk about that this is really a fallacy, and it's something that's really just the newest fad. Every couple of years, there's a new fad that everybody talks about, making sure that we're not getting this, or we're having to push this, or we're having to do more of this or less of that. But just a couple words about protein. In general, it's recommended by basically the wealth of research out there that we should be eating a little bit under 1 gram per kilogram of healthy body weight. So got to pause there for a second. Many people out there do not have healthy body weight. So it's not just a gram per kilogram of what you currently weigh. And of course, it's kilograms, it's not pounds, right? So it's the metric system. So you got to convert your weight into kilograms. And then you got to look for what your ideal body weight is for your height. But the bottom line is it's a little bit under 1 gram. But if you want to just, estimate at a gram, that'd probably be fine, of healthy body weight. Can you get too little? Really, in this country, the answer is no. Lots of research has pointed out that basically virtually everyone in Western populations consumes more than the individual requirement. This is based on a lot of meta-analyses of diet and intake. And basically, the wealth of research over the last decade has shown that plant sources of protein are healthier for humans, which probably Dr. Barnard can talk about. But just to pull out one study that came out several years ago, meta-analysis of the atherosclerosis risk in community study, which had almost 500,000 participants in the study. When carbs were decreased and in exchange people increased animal derived fat or protein, the mortality risk went up, but the mortality risk went down by almost 20% when you substituted out carbs and in plant sources of protein. So plant sources of protein are going to be healthier, and we don't have to worry about taking in too little protein. Beans, lentils, carrots have protein. Everything that we eat in a plant-based diet is going to have protein in it. And we do not have to worry about the amount that we take in. Even if you are completely plant-based, there is research, a 2013 study, so this is already 10 years ago, suggests that vegetarians and vegans still get 70% more protein than they need every day. So I know I kind of ran through that quickly, but we don't need to worry about protein intake when we're on a plant-based diet. And certainly we have evidence that plant sources of protein are the healthiest and far healthier than animal sources of protein. So try to, ignore or put earmuffs on when everyone's talking about, making sure that you increase or worry about your protein intake. If you're eating a plant-based diet, you're doing great. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to the real expert, Dr. Barnard and Terry.
Thank you, Dr. Lieberman, for that excellent information and the patient story too. That's outstanding. Our featured speaker tonight is a researcher, founding president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, founder of the Barnard Medical Center in Washington, D.C. He's editor-in-chief of the Nutrition Guide for Clinicians and author of more than a dozen books. Of his most recent book, The Power Foods Diet, that we're going to be hearing about tonight, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn of the Cleveland Clinic, who many of you are familiar with and spoke a couple months ago to us, said, quote, "With an evidence-based approach, Neal Barnard has created an encyclopedia of nutrition knowledge, defining and orchestrating the foremost use of food for taste and optimal health." Harvard professor of medicine Michelle O'Donoghue calls our speaker's new book, quote, "a comprehensive and invaluable resource for those seeking a lifelong path to better health and weight loss." It's with great pleasure that I welcome our featured speaker tonight, Dr. Neal Barnard. Dr. Barnard?
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Let me share my screen, if I may. Okay. The old-fashioned approach to dieting says, well, you get on the scale, it's looking unfriendly, so get out the calorie chart and eat less. Get out your food scale and eat tiny little portions, but that gets old by about Wednesday and you're ready to eat the sofa. And when we give up the calorie restriction, our weight tends to come back. So those methods have been really pretty much fallen aside. And the new approach is focusing on dietary habits in general, food patterns. What are people eating from day to day? And as you know, abundant research shows that when people eat more plant-based diets, less animal-based diets, they tend to be slimmer. And without limitation. When you get all the animal products out of your diet, that's the group that tends to have the healthiest body weight of all. However, what I'd like to talk about tonight is that certain foods are better than others for weight loss. Much better, in fact. And I want to say a word of thanks to our colleagues at Harvard, who did a really cool study in 2015. They showed that in a very large group of people, the more people ate of certain specific foods as the years went by, the more weight they tended to lose. Now, that's counterintuitive. You'd think if I'm eating more of anything, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, if I'm eating more, I got to gain weight. It's not what they found. They found that if they ate more of certain specific foods, people tended to lose more weight. And the more they ate these foods, the more weight they lost. And of course, we now know why, that these are foods that will tackle your appetite so that you're eating less of things, generally speaking, or they ramp up your metabolism, or they have other effects. And that's what I really want to focus on tonight. So number one food at Harvard University was the humble blueberry. That's right. And it was blueberries. It was other berries too. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, including blueberries in a muffin. As long as you didn't put in 3 pats of butter, the blueberries would tend to facilitate weight loss. Now, blueberries are blue. And that blue color comes from anthocyanins, which are powerful antioxidants. And there are all kinds of anthocyanins. There are blue ones in blueberries. There are red ones in strawberries. There are orange ones in the leaves in the fall. Don't eat the leaves, but the berries you can. And what we believe is that the blueberries, the anthocyanins of any type, influence your body metabolism. They influence your calorie burning speed. And 2 years after the Harvard study came out, some researchers in the UK did this most amazing study. They brought in 2,734 identical twins. This is the Twins UK registry. Everyone got a DEXA scan, which shows you your body composition. The twin who ate the most anthocyanins had less body fat in general and specifically less abdominal fat compared with her genetically identical twin sister. Where are their anthocyanins? Well, yes, they're in berries, but they're also in a lot of other things. The red blush on a pear, grapes. Anthocyanins are a natural pigment. And so eating for color makes sense. This is going to be a little bit of a recurrent theme here. So the anthocyanins help with weight loss, but it's not just berries. Spices also do this. We see this with ginger. We see it with hot peppers. We see it with cinnamon. Now, cinnamon contains an interesting chemical. It's an aldehyde, if you remember your high school chemistry. And researchers, being sort of uncreative people, the best name they could come up with an aldehyde from cinnamon was cinnamaldehyde. So that's what they named it. But it's a compound in cinnamon, and it increases your body metabolism. Here's how it works. In your intestinal tract, you have a receptor called TRPA1. And it has just been sitting there for thousands of generations, year after year, waiting for you to have cinnamon toast. And when you do, the cinnamaldehyde goes down your digestive tract, it attaches to the TRPA1, it squirts a little adrenaline into your bloodstream, and that increases your metabolism. Cool, exactly. Does this work? Well, Researchers have done a number of studies. I'll tell you about more of them, but this one, I think, was a particularly good one because it was double blind. They put cinnamon in capsules, and then they had other capsules that had a placebo in them, but looked very much like cinnamon. And 116 people randomly assigned to either 3 grams a day of cinnamon or 3 grams a day of a placebo. 3 grams, by the way, is a lot. It's about a teaspoon. However, in 16 weeks, the people on this in the cinnamon group lost 7.5 pounds. Okay. Now, everybody eats a little cinnamon. However, a lot of people have that jar of cinnamon that's been on their shelf for about 15 years, and maybe one of these years I'll use it up. So we like it, we think it's good, but it's really not a big part of our diet. Same with blueberries. Don't they look nice in the store? They don't end up in our cart very often. Now, by the way, whenever I see studies like this, I think it always pays to be skeptical. After all, was this funded by the National Cinnamon Council? So what we do is we look for meta-analyses, and this is what we call a forest plot. And the only thing that's important here is this is how we look for consistency of effect. Every line is a study. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different randomized clinical trials looking at cinnamon and body mass index. And if the result is right on that center line, that 0 line, that means nothing happened. But as you can see, everything is to the left of that line, meaning you see pretty consistent weight loss with it. So we believe it. We've got a mechanism. We've got consistent effects. We've got double-blind trials. It apparently works, okay? Capsaicinoids are what make hot peppers hot. And if you ever had an overzealous cook at a Mexican restaurant who put a few too many jalapenos, that burning on your tongue is what we call capsaicins or capsaicinoids. And they reduce appetite, but more importantly, they increase your calorie burning. And the research is something you should see. You bring in volunteers. You feed them peppers of various degrees of heat. And just when the person is about to explode and their sweat is coming off their forehead, you stick a probe in their ear, a thermal probe, and you measure on their tympanic membrane their body temperature. And it just goes up for about an hour afterwards. So the capsaicinoids cause you to induce thermogenesis and give off body heat. Doesn't matter if they're fresh or pickled, works either way. What matters is if they are hot. If it's a bell pepper, good source of vitamin C, nice crunch on your salad, no effect on your metabolism, will not work. It's the capsaicinoids that do it. Okay, so anyhow, I got all excited. Blueberries, cinnamon, hot peppers, ginger, da-da-da-da-da-da. There are actually dozens of these. I'll show you more. These, instead of saying to folks, as I have for decades, don't eat this, don't eat that, I want the new words to be do eat this. Let's make these into foods. Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Nixon, in my view, are the world's greatest recipe developers. And we got together. We said, let's take these I'm going to call them power foods. Let's put them into recipes. So Dustin said, gotcha. I'm going to make a blueberry syrup. Got blueberries in it, loaded with anthocyanins. This is your weight loss syrup. And Lindsay said, let me make some French toast with cinnamon on it. Okay, 2 power foods in America's favorite brunch time meal. And this is, yes, can French toast be a weight loss recipe? Absolutely it can. This is Dustin's triple berry sorbet. It's just blueberries, strawberries, and raspberries. Plus bananas, a little cherry juice or cranberry juice, a little bit of maple syrup. That's it. Blend them together, put it, and by the way, you blend them with an immersion blender, put them in a glass bowl, put a little saran wrap over the top, because otherwise you get little ice crystals forming. Put it in the freezer, and it comes out with this delicate, natural, rich sweetness that is different from the kind of chemical sweetness you get when you pick up a sorbet at the store, because it's fresh. It's a sweetness that came straight from nature. So anyway, it's a cool thing. Not to be outdone, Dustin came up with blueberry pops. And these are the ingredients. I'm not making this up. This is all there is to it. Blueberries, bananas, pears, almond milk, lemon juice. That's it. You blend it down. And then, you know that part of the store, the grocery store, where they have can openers and cupcake pans and glass bowls, measuring cups. The bigger stores have popsicle forms and sticks. So you put this in the popsicle form, or you can put it also in a ice cube tray, and out comes this wild purple pop. And when all the 10-year-old neighbor kids come by, you give them, for once in their life, they are not eating junk. They're eating berries in a form that kids think is junk, but it's great for them. Okay, so anyway, so we came up with about 132 recipes, and we put out this book earlier this year, came out in March, The Power Foods Diet. And it has been so fun. And Dustin also did the photography. I had to say, Dustin, that is about 2 inches away from food porn. And he said, listen, this is intentional. Up until now, people think of a healthy diet as deprivation. We are going to have this be the most seductive, wonderful way to get back to health. So anyway, that's the whole idea about the Power Foods diet. Now let's go back to Harvard. Berries was group number 1. I want to walk you through 5 more groups, and there's a lot more to it. Group number 2 is cruciferous vegetables. This caused the second greatest weight loss. You know them already. These are the cancer fighters like broccoli and cauliflower. They also cause weight loss. And they're good foods and people love them anyway. Green leafy vegetables like spinach, mustard greens, chard. That's group number 3. And your salad greens count. So we shouldn't be bad-mouthing lettuce. It's still part of it. Melon, cantaloupe, watermelon. They're group number 4. One thing. I started off talking about anthocyanins. Those are antioxidants. See that color in the melon? Orange. Beta carotene. Carrots, sweet potatoes, mangoes, papayas. Nature's painting box puts beta carotene in a lot of foods, and some evidence suggests that beta carotene, in addition to being a cancer fighter, when it's delivered by food, as opposed to supplements, but in food sources, cancer fighter also seems to cause weight loss. Cut it up and put it in your fridge, and your family will grab it. Watermelon, that red color is lycopene, cancer fighter also. Really famous for reducing the risk of prostate cancer, also associated with weight loss. No big surprise. It's a lot of water, a lot of fiber, not many calories. Okay, citrus fruits are group 5. And the surprise here was that it isn't just grapefruits and oranges, but also the juice of an orange counted. People will say, have the whole fruit, it's better. True, but juice at Harvard, the juice worked. Group number 6 for weight loss, the legume group. The foods that our parents and grandparents might have known about a couple generations ago, but kids today wouldn't recognize. This is a bean. Beans, peas, lentils, chickpeas. No matter how you have them, whether it's soup or a burrito, or soybeans or soybean products. Let me say 2 things about soybeans. For anyone who heard that soy causes cancer, the answer is the opposite. Soybeans reduce the risk of breast cancer, reduce the risk of prostate cancer. If anybody has any questions about that, I'll go over that in the Q&A. The second thing is that all soybean products seem to be okay. The reason I say this is that mature soybeans, edamame, you can see the soybean in there. Tempeh, same story. But once you start going into soy milk, tofu, soy burgers, soy sausage, soy bacon, it's more processed. That's true. But don't get infected by the fear of processed foods that is causing a lot of people to say, I don't care what it is, as long as it's not processed, I'll eat it. So these are people who think that eating ham or eating chicken or something like that is somehow helpful for them. If you substitute a soy chicken in place of chicken, or soy bacon instead of pork bacon, that is a good shift. And all of the soy products are associated with reductions in cancer risk. Okay? So the more it looks like an actual bean, the better, but they all count. They're all good. All right, so power foods have 3 properties. And I'd like to walk you through all 3. One is that they tame your appetite. One is that they can trap calories to make them unabsorbable. And the third is they can increase your metabolism. We'll just walk you through these real quick. Appetite taming. Your digestive tract, your intestinal tract, has a way of detecting the fact that you have eaten food. When you've eaten a fair amount of food, the digestive tract wants to tell the brain, now would be a good time to slow down your eating because your intestinal tract, can only handle so much. I've got digestive enzymes and so forth. I'm digesting what you just ate, cool it, turn down your appetite. To do this, your intestinal cells make glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, goes to the brain through the bloodstream, and it reduces your appetite. That's what it does. Now, Mother Nature holds the patent on GLP-1, so Novo Nordisk can't produce it, but they can produce Wegovy and Ozempic, which are synthetic GLP-1 or GLP-1 receptor agonists. They're powerful. They do reduce appetite as well. The price currently is $15,600 a year for one person's Wegovy. You've heard of the side effects and whatever. But the point is that your body makes this naturally, depending on what you eat. My research colleague here, Dr. Hanna Kaliova, who is the head of our clinical research team, she and her team did a really cool study. They brought in individuals and gave them a meat sandwich, fast food burger, measured their GLP-1 levels, and what they found was nothing. Their GLP-1 level just sits flat. Did the same experiment with a plant-based sandwich, and the GLP-1 rose dramatically. Why? Because your intestinal tract has its own wisdom. It's not going to be fooled by just any old thing that you throw down your stomach. It's looking for specific nutrients, and GLP-1 is triggered by the ingestion of high complex carbohydrate, high fiber foods. It is not triggered. Well, meat doesn't have either of those. Meat doesn't have any fiber, it doesn't have any complex carbohydrate. And so meat doesn't really give you the kind of GLP-1 release you want. So what does this mean? If I want to get full and stop eating, plant-based foods will do that relatively quickly. A meat-based food doesn't really do that until your stomach stretch causes enough pain to make you stop eating for that reason. And there are many people who go through their life feeling that they're not done eating until that stomach stretch and a little bit of pain makes them say, okay, now I'm full. That's 200 calories or 300 calories beyond the point where your appetite would normally have been reduced by GLP-1. Okay, so another thing, just a real no-brainer, and you know the answer to this already. How many calories are there in a gram of fat? The answer is 9. You got it, exactly. And carbohydrate is only 4, fiber 0 to 2. So what this suggests is if I fill up on 100 grams of fat or 100 grams of carbohydrate or 100 grams of fiber, the number of calories in them is dramatically different. Okay, so hold that thought. My research team tested a Mediterranean diet. Mediterranean diet. It's got a lot of vegetables and fruits in it. That's good. But it also has some chicken fat, some fish fat, a little bit of red meat, beef fat, dairy, not a lot, but some dairy fat, olive oil. Yes, it's virgin olive oil, but it's still got how many calories per gram? 9 calories per gram. Okay. So what we did is we brought in 62 people. This was published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. 62 participants randomly assigned to a Mediterranean diet or a low-fat vegan diet. 16 weeks later, they switched to the opposite diet. So everyone got both diets. Let me share with you the results. The people on the Mediterranean diet at first thought this was great because you could eat all kinds of indulgent foods, except they were bothered to notice they hadn't really lost much weight. The vegan group discovered that following a vegan diet doesn't mean that you have to acquire a taste for folk music. People followed the vegan diet. They did great. They lost weight really well. And at 16 weeks, we said, stop, take 4 weeks off. Now start the opposite diet. And the Mediterranean group now went vegan. And the weight started to come off. But the vegan group now had to, yes, they had to start eating some chicken and some fish and some olive oil and follow this diet. And you have never seen an angrier group of research participants in your life. They said, wait a minute, we've been on this vegan diet. It is working for us. We feel great. Our tastes have changed. Now we've got to put in this greasy junk and the weight is coming back. And they really were annoyed. They couldn't wait for the study to end so they could go back to the diet that worked, which is the vegan diet. Okay. So a Mediterranean diet does not cause weight loss unless you add a calorie restriction to it. Vegan diet causes it quite predictably. Why? Because a vegan diet has fiber. Meat has zero fiber. A vegan diet has no animal fat. It's got a lot of fiber and a lot of complex carbohydrate. Fills you up sooner. It is an appetite tamer. Okay. The second thing, apart from taming your appetite, is what we call calorie trapping. Fiber that you eat, whether it's in whole grain bread or fruit or vegetables or beans, the fiber, when you chew it up, breaks into a million tiny little sponges that go down your digestive tract. And as they go down, they pick up calories that you haven't absorbed yet. These little fiber sponges take those calories, they escort them down your digestive tract. They don't get absorbed at all. They go out the digestive tract. You flush them down the toilet. That's right. The more you have fiber in your foods, the more calories you're flushing away. So researchers at Tufts University actually measured this 6-week trial. They brought in 90 people. Half of them got white bread, half of them got whole grain bread. And what they showed is that the people on the whole grain bread were knocking off about 100 calories a day. It's not huge, but you're adding this to the appetite taming effect and the metabolism boosting effect. So this happens with any high fiber food. Okay. By the way, it doesn't have to be just whole grain bread. Whole grain bread is great, make it into a sandwich, but any plant food has fiber, as long as it hasn't been overly refined. Beans are the fiber champion. Okay. The third thing is metabolism boosting. And let me ask the question that I'm sure has been on your mind. What's the difference between you and a crocodile? Any ideas? Well, look at that face. See if that tells you anything. No? Okay. Here's the difference. It's a chilly afternoon. To raise her body temperature, she has to find a sunny spot and let the sun bake on her back because she's cold-blooded. And the only way she can warm up is if the environment, the outside environment, warms her up. She needs to get into the sun to warm up. You are not cold-blooded. Well, sometimes when I give a lecture in Washington, D.C., I have to change the text a little bit. But let's say you in Wisconsin, you are not cold-blooded, and which means that you can turn food into body heat. You eat the foods and it makes body heat, unlike cold-blooded animals. So I can measure it. Come into my laboratory. 6 a.m, you haven't had breakfast, your metabolism is very low. I feed you breakfast, your metabolism rises for about 3 hours, maybe a little bit longer. You're turning food into energy. You're not storing it, you're burning it. Okay, so butter doesn't give you any burn. I could feed you butter, your metabolism doesn't rise at all, but certain foods can do this. Let me share with you how we've discovered that you can modify your metabolism. We did a weight control study in 64 women. Half of them went on a low-fat vegan diet, the other half on a conventional diet, chicken and fish type diet. We asked them not to change their exercise, and the study lasted 14 weeks. The participants were horrified. They wanted to lose weight, and we were telling them to eat pancakes and chili and linguine and bananas and all these high-carb foods that they were convinced would cause weight gain. And about 3 weeks into the study, somebody discovered that Twizzlers are vegan. Now, I have to confess, when we do research studies, I send to the institutional review board my protocol, which just said vegan, low fat. I didn't think about Twizzlers, but it's true. It's just sugary, starchy, artificially colored junk. And it wasn't forbidden on this diet. So anyhow, those were the rules. Their carbohydrate intake went up in the vegan group. It went down slightly in the control group. Fat content went down in both, especially the vegan group. But when we had everybody stand on the scale after 14 weeks, we saw 13, not quite 13-pound weight loss in the vegan group and about 8 pounds in the control group. We tracked it for 2 years after the study. We found, as dieters find on the conventional diet, they ended up losing a little bit of weight, which they put all back on. And the vegan group lost weight and never put it back on because that's what happens. You're making a qualitative shift. However, before the study began, we found something else. Yes, we did find that you don't have to worry about counting calories. You don't have to limit carbohydrate. You can eat more carbohydrate. You will lose weight. That was big. But we did something else. We measured everybody's metabolism. And here's how you do it. We have a special chair in our laboratory. You put a mask on and it covers your nose and your mouth. And I'm measuring your carbon dioxide output and I'm measuring your oxygen intake. And with some pretty simple arithmetic, I can tell you your calorie burn. And it's 6 a.m, you haven't had breakfast, you're not physically active, nothing's happening, your metabolism is as low as it's going to be. I will now feed you a test meal, 720 calorie test meal. I know exactly what's in it. You're going to swallow it. And I then measure your metabolism and it goes up for about 3 hours. Do the vegan diet for 14 weeks, come back after 14 weeks, sit in the same chair, have the same test meal, the same number of calories, and your metabolism has increased by about 15%. Let me be clear what I'm saying. These are the same people testing against themselves, and their metabolism, they tended to burn a meal rather inefficiently before. And then after going vegan for 14 weeks, they were burning it even more efficiently, burning off a whole lot more calories. Why? Okay. Fasten your seatbelt. I want to give you 2 minutes of hard science. At Pennington Biomedical Research Center, Louisiana, researchers studied something called mitochondrial biogenesis. Mitochondria, as you may remember from high school biology, those tiny little dots inside your cells, little organelles. They turn fuel to energy. But you make them, they go away, they coalesce, they come, they go, they come, they go. Mitochondrial biogenesis means you're making these mitochondria. You're able to burn more calories. And what they did is they gave these people a high-fat diet for 3 days, 72 hours, and found that the high-fat diet caused their mitochondrial biogenesis to be suppressed. Let me show you graphically what this looks like. This is a muscle cell. Muscle cell has mitochondria. It's got a whole bunch of mitochondria. It's got fat in it. Little fat particles, which doctors will refer to as intramyocellular lipid. It's just fat in a cell. But now I have cheese pizza and I have a steak, and the fat from those foods comes into my body. Some of it goes into body fat, but some of it ends up in my muscle cells. Fat that you eat gets into your muscle cells. It starts accumulating. When that happens, the mitochondria cannot function. They're not efficient. They're swimming in this oil slick. Fatted cells slows down your after meal burn. What do? I'm going to go on a vegan diet. There's now 0 animal fat. I'm going to keep oils really, really low. The fat starts to dissipate, which I can measure with magnetic resonance spectroscopy. I can see this in your liver and in your muscle cells. It starts to go away and your metabolism ramps up. So you're getting the fat out of your cells, boost your after meal calorie burn. The reason this is so important, you will see people who are 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old. They'll say, wow, my metabolism has slowed down so badly. When I was a kid, I could eat anything, but now I just look at food and I gain weight. They're not wrong, but it has nothing to do with their age. It has to do with cheese pizza. They've been eating fatty foods. It's accumulating in their muscle cells. It's interfering with their mitochondrial biogenesis, and age is no barrier to getting that out of your cells and getting your metabolism back. Okay? So very cool. So we did this for the first time in 2005. We did it again in 2020. The AMA published it in JAMA Network Open, 244 people, and you can see these really remarkable effects. Okay, so the whole idea is let's have fun with it. Let's have foods that maybe don't even require cooking at all. Simple foods, quick foods. We made lots and lots and lots of recipes, and we're just enjoying the fact that each of these are power foods. They're high fiber foods and anthocyanin-rich foods and so forth. Let me share with you just a couple of individual experiences. This is Shawnee, grew up in Kansas City. When she was about 10, her mother and she noticed that she was gaining weight, as her mother had a generation earlier. And when she was 12, her mother said, you got to go with me to weight control classes. And she ended up on weight control drugs as a child, being told to measure and weigh and da-da. And when kids gain weight, for some reason, we tend not to think about the quality of foods that we're giving our kids. You don't hear families saying, well, maybe we decide to go on a low-fat vegan diet. No, they say there's something wrong with you. You've got to exercise more, less screen time, da, 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 da. You end up berating this child with things that they are going to remember for the rest of their life. What Shawnee luckily discovered was that there are certain foods that loved her back, that she acquired a taste for fruits and vegetables and healthy foods. And she started eating more and more and more of them. And as she ate more of these foods, she started to lose weight and to regain her sense of self-confidence. And as time went on, she lost more than 100 pounds. And she just felt great. And she ended up saying to her mom, let me help you. You tried to help me as best you could. Let me share with you what I've learned. Shawnee's story is in the Power Foods Diet, as is Steve Loam. And you may know Steve Loam. I want to tell you Steve's story for anybody who doesn't know this. Steve's a good friend, he's a cardiologist. He was running a half marathon in Monterey Bay, California. Running down the road, sees a guy on the track in front of him who started earlier. The guy's face down. Steve runs over. The man's got no pulse. Steve calls out, somebody with a cell phone, we need an ambulance, we need a defibrillator. They end up getting a defibrillator. They find a pulse on this man. They start a pulse on him. He was pulseless. They get a pulse on him with a defibrillator. They put him in the ambulance, sent him to the emergency room. Steve saved his life. However, he gets to the finish line, and there's another man lying down, pulseless, unresponsive. Exactly the same story. They have to get a defibrillator. Steve is doing CPR all the while. They put on the pads, they shock him, they bring him back to life too. So anyhow, the reason this became famous is the Today Show heard about what Steve had done. I mean, what are the odds? Two people whose lives were saved by the same man in the same race, the same day. So the Today Show called Steve, said, come and meet us in New York. We want you to be on TV. And they bring the other two guys, to have a reunion, as they would do. What they didn't know is Steve had already been in touch with them and said, look, you guys have to, I don't want to resuscitate you next year. Let's see what we can do to get in gear. But anyway, the reason I'm telling you about Steve and the reason he's in the Power Foods Diet is because he's got a story. It's not just this story. He's got his own story. Steve, as a young man, had weight he didn't want. He's a really smart guy. College student, medical student, resident cardiology fellow. He looks up the dietary guidelines for Americans and follows it. I took the skin off my chicken. Doesn't work. And he's got lots and lots of weight. And now he finally learned what this group knows, which is you get the animal products out of your diet completely. Get the junk out. It's not just the healthy power foods we bring in. You got to get the bad stuff out as well. And that's what Steve did. And he lost a huge amount of weight and helped his family to do the same. And Steve, I got to tell you, Steve Loam is a hero, not just for saving those lives, but for saving countless others by getting the word out in a huge way. The last thing, just really quickly, how do we start a healthful diet? In our clinic at the Barnard Medical Center and in our research studies, we've worked with many thousands of people. And we do not say, let me just meet you where you are. We're going to make tiny little changes. And we hope that eventually, you'll want to start a healthier diet. We don't do that because that gives no reward. The patient says, oh, this is great. I've been eating an extra serving of vegetables each week and nothing's happening. We do meet the patient where they are, but where they are is the emergency room. We need to help them rapidly So they get a reward and then they think that this is worth doing. Here's what we do. Say week 1. By the way, the doctor just explains the diet really quickly. This takes 2-3 minutes. Then hand them off to a dietitian who is going to be their coach and is going to work with them. You say to the patient, take a week and just check out the possibilities of what you would eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. Take a piece of paper and make a list. So if all you eat now is cereal, not very adventurous, but it'll be plant-based if it's almond milk. Or let's switch the cold cereal to maybe oatmeal if you want. And maybe we put berries on it and some cinnamon. Okay. Natural foods, power foods. Okay. Wait a minute. I'm a sausage guy. Okay. So go to the store. Is there a vegan sausage? Yes, there is. Let's try it. Vegan bacon. Well, it's kind of a liberal interpretation of the original, but if that's your thing, try it. And people end up trying all different kinds of plant-based foods, and they write down the ones that they like, whether it's breakfasts or lunches or dinners, or they go out to a restaurant. They'll go to an Italian place. They'll go to a Latin American restaurant. They'll go Chinese. And many of you have done the same thing, where you're just trying different kinds of cuisine, looking for the plant-based options. If fast food is their thing, okay, I'm a Taco Bell. That's where I live. Let's swap the meat taco for a bean burrito. Leave off the cheese, maybe add some jalapeno peppers. Okay, power food. Okay, not the pinnacle of culinary art, but we're getting somewhere. Okay. The patient in 7 days has a huge long list of foods. Step 2 is just take the next 3 weeks, eat those foods. I've never seen a person unable to do this. They say, okay, I'm going to do no animal products for the next 3 weeks. I already know what I want to eat. I like these foods. After 3 weeks, 2 things invariably happen. Physically, the patient is no longer the same. They're losing weight, their blood sugar is coming down, their blood pressure is improving, but their tastes have had 21 days without meat. 21 days is the magic number for the taste buds to accommodate to their new environment. At that point, the patient might say, well, give me a grilled cheese sandwich and give me a hunk of ham. And they taste it and they don't like it. And so anyway, these 2 steps make it really, really easy. The patient is rewarded quickly, and meet with them every week. You don't have to do it, but somebody on your staff does it, and people do really, really well. We do have an app called the 21-Day Vegan Kickstart. It's in English, it's in Spanish, it's free. It's on your iPhone, on your Android as well, and it's a cool thing. So this is our team, Dustin, Lindsay, and me, and we put out this book. And I want to thank you for letting me share this time with you.
Dr. Barnard, thank you so much. What excellent information. Are you ready for some Q&A?
You bet, sure.
All right, we will. I would ask anybody who has a question to pop it in the chat box, or, excuse me, use the raised hand icon, and we will get to people as we can. And I'll start with the questions that are already in here. One was a comment here from Joyce, who said she immediately went on plant-based whole food after seeing Dr. Barnard in Appleton about 20 years ago for physician education before launching a CHIP program for their patients. She said, it changed my life for the better. And she also mentioned something that we should mention, everybody, that she loves the Exam Room podcast. So can you give a quick bit about your Exam Room podcast? It is excellent.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for coming to the lecture in Appleton. And thank you for that very, very kind comment. Yeah, the Exam Room podcast is run by Chuck Carroll, and it's put out through the Physicians Committee. And wherever you get your podcasts, look for the Exam Room. Chuck is really a ball of fire, and he has great guests, and it's live. And it's also recorded to hear later. And anyway, it's the Exam Room podcast. You'll find it really enjoyable.
And that's several days a week, right?
Yeah. Chuck is terrific, and he's kind enough to have me on. And we have lots of other great guests here as well.
There's a huge following as well. And Joyce mentioned how much you like your Prevent and Reverse Diabetes book. Let's see, Mahai, great point about protein, no such thing as protein deficiency. Penny said Penny had kind of a more personal question here. My cholesterol keeps going up in spite of 10 years on a plant-based diet. Cholesterol 211, triglycerides 121, HDL 50, LDL 139. I'm 5'7", 120 pounds, 63 years. Consumption of processed food is minimal. Do you have any suggestions?
Okay. First of all, to be clear, I didn't mean anything that I said to take the place of actually seeing your own doctor and getting your own numbers and following them over time and following your doctor's advice. It's a good thing to do. The steps start with obviously avoiding animal products completely. That's important. Second thing, I don't know if you saw Monica Agarwal's article that was published in the Journal of the American Heart Association it was last week, actually. She used a plant-based diet, vegan diet, with or without the addition of olive oil. And olive oil really defeated the cholesterol lowering effect to a great degree. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are on a meat-based diet and you switch to a plant-based diet that has some olive oil in it, your cholesterol level is going to fall because you're not eating meat, you're not eating dairy. But if you have the exact same plant-based diet without the olive oil, your cholesterol level is going to fall better, fall more effectively. Why? Olive oil is 14% saturated fat. That's better than beef, which is 50%, better than chicken, which is 30%, but it's not zero. And so getting olive oil out of your diet is a good idea. The other thing is you'll remember from how many years ago, David Jenkins and his team published the portfolio diet. They said, start with plant-based. Let's add the foods that tend to power down cholesterol. Soluble fiber, so that's beans, oats. He actually used nuts. Now we're careful about nuts with people where fats are causing their diabetes to get worse or causing their weight to get worse. But he added a little bit of almonds or walnuts, things like that, and found they had a cholesterol lowering effect. He added soy products as well, and he used these sterol and stanol margarines like Benecol, and found that he could knock down cholesterol really, maybe 30% in a month, something like that. So those are a few steps. And then maybe 1 in 10 people will do all that and their cholesterol level is still high, and then we're going to blame genetics. And that leaves us with the question of the day, which is, let's say I've got a high cholesterol. Do I start a statin? And the answer up till 10 years ago was yes. The answer today from a lot of cardiologists is not unless you've got some other big risk factor happening. So talk to your doctor, talk to your cardiologist, and see what they have to tell you.
Thank you, Doctor. Mary says, interesting about the albumin. My husband had kidney failure from Dr. Liberman's talk. My husband had kidney failure, and the advice was at the time was that patients with higher albumin did better. So they pushed all protein to their patients, increased meat, eggs, sausage, protein drinks, etc. I always wondered if the albumin was just a marker. The patients that were already doing well, but not a cause and effect by eating more meat. There was no talk of plant-based eating. That was 8 years ago.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. I'll defer to Dr. Lieberman on that, but yeah, pushing protein in kidney patients is not a good idea. Well, let me be more nuanced. I think you have to take a look at the patient, see their protein retaining capacities, and take this into account. By the way, there's a question I'm seeing here in the chat. Is there a danger to a cholesterol level that gets too low? The answer is no. If your cholesterol level and you're otherwise healthy and you've driven your cholesterol level low by diet alone, you're fine. Now, there are some cases where people are really, really sick for other reasons, and their body can no longer make cholesterol. They might end up with a low cholesterol level, but just bringing down a cholesterol level to a very low level naturally through diet, no, it's not dangerous at all. It's a good thing.
Yeah, this is a rather long one here. I'll try to speak quickly. Cara says, I'm curious about how comparing plant-based diet versus standard American diet is then equivalent to saying that eating plants is better than eating meat that is regenerative, grass-fed, finished, or caged. There's plenty of research indicating that high-quality animal products are the most nutrient-dense compared to plants. Also low protein intake is associated with many medical issues, especially in the elderly, like sarcopenia and bone loss, resulting in increased falls. Protein is key for building muscle, and if you don't get enough, just like other nutrients, you'll take it from somewhere. So basically, your muscles. It's also necessary for recovery from surgery and post-operative healing, like wound healing. Do you have some comments on that?
Well, yeah. First of all, let me preface my comments by saying that I come from North Dakota, from a long line of cattle ranchers, and my grandpa always rolls in his grave when I say anything bad about the cattle industry. And let me acknowledge that these are honest, good folks who got into a way of making a living, sort of like tobacco farmers did, way before the risks were known. What is grass-fed beef? Grass-fed beef is taking grass, putting it through an animal's body. That animal, it starts in the rumen. That's the first of four stomach compartments. And the rumen is a place where for 48 hours that grass is going to ferment. And then it goes further down the digestive tract, and various enzymes and acids break down all the proteins in the grass and convert them from plant proteins into animal proteins. They take the fats. The fat in grass is not very plentiful, and they convert it both content-wise and qualitatively to a high saturated fat, highly saturated fat in the beef. They take the carbohydrate and remove it completely, and take the fiber and remove it completely. And so what you're now eating is something that is grass modified through a biological machine that we call a cow into a food that is sold at a high price. You can do the same with corn. You feed corn into the biological machine and you get animal protein out of it, or you can get milk out of it. What's the advantage of taking plant proteins and converting them to animal proteins? That was a question asked by Harvard researchers in 2016 explicitly, and they found that if you take animal protein, animals as your source of protein, and you trade them so as to get your protein from plants instead, your mortality in any given time window goes down. That's true whether it was beef protein or poultry or fish or dairy or egg. There is no advantage to getting your protein from animal products. Now, it's true, you need protein for wound healing, you need protein for lots of things, but you don't need this humongous glob of animal, but you don't need a lot, as Dr. Lieberman was mentioning. B, you don't need a humongous glob of animal protein. You don't need any animal protein at all. You're better off without it. The last thing, and just to be clear, you're not a cat. Biologically, there are carnivores. Cats are carnivores. You are a primate. Specifically, you're a great ape. As are gorillas and chimpanzees and bonobos and orangutans. And they are largely or entirely herbivorous. They're not eating ice cream. They're not eating ham sandwiches. They're eating fruits and leaves and these kinds of things. They do very, very well. I'm not suggesting that you need a diet that is entirely raw, like theirs is, but I am suggesting that a diet based on vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans, supplemented with B12, is the healthiest way to go.
Let me jump to Grace here. She's asking what type of, you were talking about cinnamon, and is there a type of cinnamon that's better than others?
Oh, wonderful question. Thank you. Yes, Ceylon cinnamon, Ceylon, as in Sri Lanka, the country of Ceylon. When you go into the store, you'll see Saigon cinnamon or Indonesian cinnamon, Chinese cinnamon, something like that. Those are actually cassia. It's a closely related plant. It's got a lot of bang in it, but the Ceylon cinnamon is a little milder and it is safer and healthier. Buy that one and buy it organic.
Nanati, I think. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It says, love this book. Jan says, will this be recorded for viewing later? Yes, it will. It'll probably be up within 24 hours. Just go to YouTube and type in PB Now and go to our video area, and it should be up there. David asks, how does fiber flush away calories without also flushing away vitamins and minerals?
Yeah, all of it. Oops, all of that can happen. The amount is rather modest. It's about, as I mentioned, it's about 100 calories a day. So overall, with fiber-rich foods, it's a net positive with regard to vitamin intake.
And Grace says Oreo cookies are vegan also.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that is vegan. And let me be clear: people will put down vegan processed foods, and it's true that having foods that are less processed is a good idea. But let me be clear: if you take a typical meat eater who's eating a lot of processed foods and they become a vegan eating processed foods, they made a good switch. They did a good thing because they threw out the dairy and the eggs and the meat, and that's good. Once they're there, they're going to want to eat more natural foods and make additional changes so the foods that they're eating are more healthful for them. So I don't want to really put down a person who has managed, who has succeeded in getting the animal products off their plate by saying, that's a bad move. That's a really good move. Within that, you'll discover that Mother Nature had all kinds of healthy snacks. She named them tangerines and bananas, and apples and oranges, all kinds of things.
Amy asks, what was the age of the people in these test groups? And I'm not sure which test she's talking about, but she says, should we have the same results in our 60s? If we aren't, what could be contributing to weight gain and higher LDLs while following this strict plant-based diet? Okay,
so they're wondering if at age 60, what results could you get compared to a person who's old? Okay, well, if you're 60, and you're kind of on the young side for a lot of this people that we're looking at here. We're working with people right now. We're doing a very large study now with people who are up in years. Some of them are in their 80s. Age is not a barrier. If we see somebody who's not losing weight, what we do is, if weight loss is your goal, first of all, we get rid of all animal products. If a person has animal products plus salmon is 40% fat. If it's Atlantic salmon, if it's Chinook, it's 52%. You're not going to lose weight with that. Get all that stuff out of your diet. Get the cheese out of your diet. Cheese is 70% fat. And then the next thing is, if a person is really kind of stuck and they're not losing weight, write down everything you eat for about a day and look to see if there are fatty foods that have sneaked in there. Avocado toast, coconut oil, peanut butter. And I'm not saying that all oils are necessarily terrible. You need a tiny bit of alpha-linolenic acid, as you know. It's an essential fat, as is linoleic acid. But you need a minuscule amount. And when you get the fatty foods out of your diet, typically weight loss resumes.
Karen asks, and I think you've answered some of this already, but she says, what about the argument that perhaps the ultra-processed food is the real enemy, not necessarily lean meat? Doesn't this give the biggest bang for the buck? Our ancestors have been eating meat since the beginning of time.
Your ancestors maybe were eating meat since the beginning of time, but my ancestors didn't eat meat at all until the advent of the Stone Age, when we had the capacity to make sharp tools and to remove the meat from bones and that kind of thing. And you could make arrowheads. Keep in mind, your ancestors were great apes. And it wasn't until we had fire that we could really make something of meat eating, and it could be something much more common. So the so-called hunter-gatherers, that's sort of a romantic image of your great-great-great-great-great-grandpa running around in a loincloth with a spear. But the fact of the matter is they were gatherers much more than hunters, up until technology gave people the capacity to kill animals.
Joyce asked, do you think we should test ApoB levels?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Apolipoprotein levels?
Yeah. Do you think we should test ApoB levels?
Oh, you can. Whatever your cardiologist wants to test, you can. But what you're if you simply get your LDL cholesterol tested, that's going to be enough to guide you in the right direction.
Nana T asked another question here. Thoughts on juicing kale and broccoli sprouts versus smoothie? I know the phytonutrients question mark are attached to the fiber, but had gastric surgery 20 years ago and hate doing the bulk of greens in smoothies.
Yeah, I don't really have a particularly smart answer to that. There are different people who deal with them in different ways, and I am aware of a certain amount of evidence suggesting that cruciferous vegetables do well being cooked, and are much less digestible when they're not cooked. And that may well be true. I've heard of other people who do very, very well with them, totally raw and thrown into a smoothie. The only other concern about smoothies is it's pretty easy to drink a lot of calories really fast. So that's about it. But see where it brings you.
Gail says, I have a teaspoon of flax meal in my oatmeal. Is that as good as flax seed, or does the flax meal have less nutritional value?
Great question. I don't know. I would look at the package and see where it's from, but I would guess that if it's simply just ground flaxseed, then it's liberating the fat in it, which is alpha linolenic acid, and which is something that's beneficial.
Joyce says, how many nuts and seeds do you recommend?
If you are a healthy person who isn't trying to lose weight or tackle diabetes, maybe about an ounce a day of almonds or sunflower seeds or something like that. An ounce in your hand is when you pour that into the palm before it hits your fingers. That's an ounce. And the reason I would recommend that is it's a good source of vitamin E. Vitamin E has been shown, if it is from food sources, to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. I'm speaking here of the Chicago Health and Aging Project, which put out those data, and they were quite compelling. Vitamin E pills, by the way, did not work, but from food it did. The problem is that nuts are really fatty. And so if you're trying to lose weight, they're going to interfere with that. If you're trying to tackle diabetes, they're going to interfere with that because fat inside your cells causes insulin resistance. So that's the big problem. And as any squirrel will tell you, it's hard to eat a lot of nuts because they're up in a tree and they're wrapped in a shell and they're seasonal. And human beings, of course, are clever. We have somebody to pull them down from the tree for us, take the shells off, put smokehouse flavorings, and you can eat an enormous amount of them. And we gain weight while the squirrels didn't.
Berta says hi and thank you for your work and time, and asks, do you ever experience or witness patients converting to high fiber vegan diets from high fat, low fiber diets, experience bloating or constipation initially? And also, you didn't clarify the importance of using GMO-free soy versus organic. You promote a difference.
It is very rare that a person increasing their fiber gets constipated, but once in a blue moon, your digestive tract can create issues for you. So as you're increasing your fiber intake, increase your water intake as well, along with it, and go gradually. You don't have to have a humongous amount of fiber all at once. Let your digestive tract get to know this new regimen that you're introducing to it. With regard to GMO, I am quite prepared to believe that it's a good idea to avoid genetically modified soybeans, and I choose them myself. If you buy organic tofu, organic soy milk, by law, it cannot be GMO. Having said that, I can't point to a single study actually showing serious problems from GMO products. I just have assumed there's got to be something wrong with them because they're a product of technology, but I can't really back that up. So I always pick the organic ones anyway.
Rachel is curious about your thoughts on fermented foods such as kombucha and kefir. She says, I'm going to start making my own kefir, but now debating if I should make it with plant milk.
Well, you should definitely not make it with dairy products. Let me be really clear about this. Dairy comes from a cow. The cow is a biological machine who ingested corn or alfalfa or some kind of grain. And then the body of this cow transformed all of this natural food into something completely different. And when the body of this cow made milk, it was following a DNA blueprint that evolved over time to produce the ideal cocktail for fattening a newborn calf. That's what dairy is for. And on every dairy in the world, the cows are impregnated artificially They're artificially inseminated every year. The reason I'm telling you this is after their 9-month gestation and they give birth, and they start producing milk, and of course their calves are taken away, which is part of the ethical reason why civilized people don't consume milk. What happens at that time is that the cow is producing estrogen that gets into the milk, and you're going to drink it. And 3 months later, she will be impregnated again by the farmer, so that the process is an annual one. She will continue to be milked during the next pregnancy. And much of the milk you're drinking came out of a pregnant cow whose body was making a huge amount of estrogen, and you're drinking it. So you can call it milk or kefir or ice cream or cheese. It's always got estradiol in it. So let's see, 4 years ago, the Adventist Health Study 2 showed that the more milk you drink, the higher your risk of breast cancer. Why? They believe it's because of estradiol. And about a year ago or 2 years ago, the China Kadoorie Biobank study found exactly the same thing, that the more milk you drink, the higher your risk of breast cancer. So don't consume the hormones. Don't eat something that, this would be my advice, that was designed to simply cause weight gain in a bovine infant.
Thank you. Joyce says, cooking kale and arugula and minestrone or Asian, Mexican, or vegetable soup is a great way to get greens, not have to put them in smoothies. I love kimchi for fermented food options. So that's, yeah, or asks, how much vitamin B12 should you take?
Okay, maybe this should be the last sentence. The last question. I realize I'm taking too much of people's time. The RDA for adults for vitamin B12 is 2.4 micrograms, not grams or milligrams, but micrograms. So that's a teeny tiny amount. So if you go to the store, you'll see supplements, maybe 100 micrograms or 200 or 500. Those are all fine. You'll also see them with 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000. And those are more heroic doses. They're not dangerous, but it's way more than you likely need. So if it's one of those very large doses, like 1,000, you might take it every other day or something like that. If B12, if there's any reason to be concerned about it, have your doctor test it, follow your doctor's advice, and your doctor will put you on a specific regimen. But for your average person, taking 200, 500, something like that every day, it's a good regimen. Don't miss it. Don't not have it. Don't think that nature ought to give you everything. Because you don't live in nature. You live in New Jersey. And so you're going to need to have some supplemental vitamin B12.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnard.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be able to speak with you today.
And looking forward to reading the rest of your book. So much outstanding information. As a quick reminder to everybody, our next monthly meeting will be Thursday, September 12th, 6 p.m. Central Time. If you'd like to receive notice of this or other upcoming PB Now events and are not currently on our list, just Google us at PB Now, and there you can subscribe and receive email notice of our upcoming events. Also, remember, if you'd like to check out past meetings, just go to the video library section on our website or search for us on YouTube under PB Now. And you can go back and watch entire talks or skim through the parts of each presentation that might be of particular interest to you. Thanks again to our speakers, Dr. Josh Lieberman, Dr. Neal Barnard, for sharing their valuable time and knowledge with us tonight. And thanks to all of you for coming tonight. Good night. I hope you can join us next time.